Coming up on Wrestling Life.
It's crazy. I found some old diaries the other day, my scheduled diaries. I was just looking at. I had a weekend where I was in Bristol, then I was in Glasgow, then I was back down over in Norwich in one weekend. And I was thinking, what was I even thinking? When did I eat? When did I train? You know.
No.
But you just did it.
Welcome to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that features real talk from real talent.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling Life, the show that tells the real stories behind those that have shaped wrestling's past, present and future. I'm your host Ben Veal from Wrestling Life Online, and joining me today is one of the most respected names to ever come out of the British wrestling scene. He is a two-time TNA X Division Champion, a Ring of Honor Pure Champion, has held the IWGP, Pro Wrestling Noah, NWA and TNA Tag Team Championships, is a former OVW Heavyweight Champion, and has built up a reputation globally over the last 30 years as the ambassador of British wrestling and as one of the very best to lace up the boots. It's a real pleasure not only to get this long intro out of the way, but to also welcome to Wrestling Life the one, the only, Doug Williams. Doug, thanks for joining me on the show today. How are you?
I'm pleased to be here, Ben. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Very good.
That's a lot of titles.
It's a hell of an intro. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's easily done when it comes to someone who's, had the career that you've had.
Mm-hmm. I guess so. Yeah, 30 years. You build it up over time, don't you?
You do. So look, we'll come to the end and we'll work backwards. So look, we're speaking today because you announced back in July 2023 that Doug Williams, the pro wrestler, is over and a new story awaits. So why was 2023 the right time for you to retire and step away from the squared circle?
Essentially because I had scheduled knee replacement surgery, which happened, and it happened a little bit sooner in the year than I was expecting, forcing me to cancel a bunch of bookings, unfortunately. But it also gave me, that I knew then that was it, really. To be honest, it was relatively an easy decision to make because I was not enjoying the wrestling for the first 6 months of 2023 because I was constantly getting hurt or injured or something. I was always, just signs my body was breaking down in ways that only it can show. So I wasn't feeling that motivation anymore. So it was definitely the right time, and this time is almost certainly it.
How did you feel? You did the classic kind of leaving the boots in the middle of a ring. How did you feel, kind of lacing up the boots for the last time and knowing that this was done?
I mean, yeah, it was emotional, very much so. It's an end of, something that has captured the majority of my life. Over half my life has been in the wrestling ring, so it was difficult from that respect. But I kind of. I've been there before, back in 2018, and I'd already made up my mind anyway a couple of months before, so it wasn't like something I had to do and spur of the moment decision or something that was forced upon me. It was something that I'd kind of planned for, so it was fine.
Yeah, I saw when I was researching this, I saw a photo that you shared from, I think it was your very first publicity shot or your very first kind of bit of coverage you had back in Power Slam.
Oh, wow.
A very, very young looking Doug Williams in the early stages of your career there.
I think that'd be 1997, I think was the first time I appeared in Power Slam. But yeah, that's crazy.
Wow. So look, go right back to the beginning, Ben. What attracted you to pro wrestling in the first place?
Well, I think it was kind of a mixture of showmanship and entertainment along with the athletic side of it. I was already quite a high level performing judo player, and wrestling kind of appealed to me in that respect, in that I thought I could probably give it a go, although I didn't think it would be to the level that I eventually got to. I was kind of set on, maybe wrestling in a few British rings back in the time, because I'd watched the old stuff, the ITV stuff when I was young. But it was kind of WWF that brought me back into being a real fan when I was, early teens. And that was really what attracted me to it. It's just like the characters and the razzmatazz and the showmanship of it all, centered around essentially what is, combat sports. yeah, and I was kind of hooked. Really, it was brilliant.
I'm always interested. Who was your guy growing up? Because I'm a Bret Hart guy. Who hooked
Well,
you?
I'm probably maybe a little bit generation before, but Ted DiBiase and Randy Savage are probably my two favourites.
Yeah, so we're both workhorse guys. Just
definitely, yeah. I mean,
a few
wrestling
years removed.
heroes is what I like. You know, guys that are competent and don't always cheat, but they're still villainous in their character and how they portray themselves in the ring. You know, I think that's definitely my favourite kind of characters.
Really interesting because I'm going to WrestleMania for first time for WrestleMania 40, and in getting ready for that, I've been watching all of the WrestleManias from the beginning, which has been well, A, it's taken a lot of time, but B, it's really interesting to see the evolution of that product. And the second that you see the likes of Randy Savage and Ted DiBiase and then Kurt Hennig and later Bret Hart enter the ring, you can just see the evolution of the sport right before your very eyes, and just their pacing and their just everything they bring to the table.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it changes quite quickly over a few years, I think. But I think it's just because when WWF exploded or grew, that was kind of the tail end of that late 70s, early 80s style, and it started moving as the later 80s into the 90s into a faster paced style kind of. And so we kind of caught the tail end of that you know.
Well, of course, when you were growing up, there wasn't, with the exception of the British Bulldogs, there wasn't really much in the way of seeing British talent making it internationally. Whereas obviously now you've seen it a lot more, and so you were very much part of that wave, weren't you? Of talent that would go over to major US promotions and carve out a name for yourself while still retaining that style that you brought to the British scene.
Well, yeah, and it was very difficult. When I was starting out, or even the first 10 years of my business, getting abroad in any respect, even to Europe or like you say, America, it was just, there wasn't like now there's structured steps, there's goals to aim for that are, manageable, and you work towards them, and you're getting in. And obviously the industry's grown to such a huge extent that they look for so many, pulling in so many more guys internationally. But yeah, when I started, and like I say, the first 10 years of my career, very, very difficult. I mean, I was kind of relentless in trying to get bookings outside of the country, and it paid off, thankfully. It's a combination of luck and talent as well, thankfully. But yeah.
And perseverance, isn't it? It's, as you say, it's years in the game, it's reps, it's building that reputation up slowly.
Absolutely, and there's lucky breaks as well. Like you meet people, so you get the networking. Some Americans that come over and toured in the UK, they went back and they put a word in and things like that, and all helps. But it was all much more organic, much more a slower process. So much uncertainty, that you just didn't know really. And the UK was quite isolated in its exposure by the wrestling media of the time, which was limited to probably 3 or 4 magazines and obviously the newsletters. The coverage in them was near to non-existent because the British scene it died on a major level. Such that they didn't feel like they needed to cover it. So it was difficult to get your name out because of that, if nothing else.
So when you kind of joined the business, you said about, when you arrived, did you really feel that it was possible to make a living out of the British scene? Or did you see it as something? So what was your ambition kind of going in, Doug?
Well, see, even my first year, I did 70 matches, but you still only, you probably, we're talking early 90s here, so 10 or 15 pound a match. So it's not mega bucks, and I know that I knew what the top guys were never going to be getting, because you can see by the side of the audience, and the top guys are never going to be earning huge amounts of money. And in the 90s, there just wasn't the volume of shows that you could, even if they were relatively modest paydays, you just couldn't get the volume that you needed in order to generate the income. So I obviously was content to keep my full-time job and do the shows as and when I could.
Yeah, and as you say, it's a slow graft, isn't it? Of slowly building a reputation, building a name for yourself, and then over time, we've obviously seen the industry explode and the British scene, really gather steam and really become ultra competitive.
Yeah.
But obviously, you were there at a time that very much wasn't the case, weren't you? Very much, one of the early, I guess, that early groundswell of a new breed of talent, bringing new energy into the industry.
Definitely, yeah. And it's a shame that there wasn't the infrastructure in place in the country to allow it to thrive and for us to earn money in this country, without the need to travel abroad. Really, I mean, a lot of guys did just wrestle, but they were single guys living at home with their parents still. You're never going to make an independent living out of it, I'd say, back then.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that gets lost, and one of the reasons why through this podcast I want to have, I talk about real talk from real talent, because I think it gets overlooked a lot with these kind of larger than life wrestlers and superstars and what have you.
Yeah.
But actually, you're all real people.
Yeah.
Live real lives with real families that have to put up this incredibly grueling schedule. And whilst I'm sure in one respect it's very, you're drawn to the US because of the scene, and that's where the crowd is and that's where the opportunities are. I'm sure there's also a real wish that you could do that same thing in the UK and not have to leave your country.
Yeah, a little bit. It's interesting really, because as I started to become a professional wrestler in the first couple of years, my kind of ambition switched from wanting to go to America to wanting to go to Japan and Germany as well, because of the tournaments I knew happened there. And that's where most of the British guys from the generation before made good money going to Germany and Japan as opposed to the United States. So my ambition kind of switched to doing that, which was kind of more my focus. So yeah, the USA stuff I did in the earlier days, like the founding times of Ring of Honor and that sort of thing, kind of just a lucky break really. I wasn't looking or pushing for that at that point.
I mean, you had 2 stints in Ring of Honor. What are your memories like of being part of ROH?
Yeah, it's interesting. I always get asked this question. I always give it the same answer. It's like they were obviously, the exposure that they had through the newsletters made them out to be a big deal and something very special, important. But that aside, when you got there, you understood and you realised that it's pretty much the same as wrestling any other show, back home or wherever. It was 500 people in an armory, in a rough part of Philadelphia, and it was interesting, really. Still got changed in the basement, and the building wasn't air conditioned, so you were sweaty and horrible. And once you got over that fear of this is going to be a global exposure, it was just like wrestling on any other show, really.
Yeah. I think where ROH has kind of built up, it's almost like built it up in nostalgia, hasn't it? I mean, obviously at the time with the dirt sheets and the internet and stuff, it was made out to be the promotion. But also it's looking back at it now with hindsight, isn't it? With how many, globally known Hall of Fame talents have gone through ROH at one point or another, pretty much all of whom you have shared a ring with. I mean, I could reel out a list of all the people you've been in the ring with, but it would take too long. I mean, what have been some of your favourite dance partners over the years?
Definitely Christopher Daniels. Always really enjoyed wrestling him. Brian Danielson too. AJ Styles, love working with him. Jerry Lynn as well. I mean, I could go on and on, couldn't I? Really, they were some of my favourite guys to work with. And then a couple of guys on the British scene I always used to work really well with. James Mason, who's still around now. And then Phil Flash Barker was another one of my favourite opponents. We probably known for FWA, but we wrestled hundreds and hundreds of times on the British circuit and around. So, yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the guys that worked with and they've gone on to be, huge stars And I'm often asked the question, well, why aren't you still? And I'm still there. And I'm like, well, I was actually 10 years older than a lot of these guys. That's what these guys have started in the States, and they were in their 20s, early 20s. I was already, come Ring of Honor, I was already 30 by that point.
Right.
So I was 10 years older than a lot of these guys. So, they're still almost in their primes at the moment, whereas I haven't got any more.
No, it's interesting. Of course, in all of those years, you're racking up your bump card, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I mean, and most of those names you mentioned, by the time they did have perhaps major WWE runs, already probably getting towards the end of their 30s. I think AJ Styles was around about 40 when he made the move from TNA. Yeah. So it's very much a case of, and I guess for a lot of them, it's been a case of adapting their style to preserve their body for as long as possible, hasn't it? When you finally do get called to the
absolutely,
big
well, the requirement to take the risks and just the style that they require you to wrestle means that you are going to be a lot safer anyway, which is a good thing, given you reach that point, like you say, after you've already put in 10, 15, 20 years of graft, in dodgy rings and small buildings against, not necessarily always against the most professional or skilled of opponents. It's probably a bit of a relief when they get, it's balanced out by other stresses.
Yeah,
when you reach that level of wrestling, but the actual in-ring itself is probably it is an easy thing to manage at that point.
So I'm interested. I mean, obviously we as fans watching on, I can see the instant chemistry between someone like you and Bryan Danielson, for example. But what is it about some of those like opponents that you've loved working with? Is it that they're just easier to work with, that you get one another, that the communication is less? What is it that makes a great opponent?
Well, it's just people are well trained, aren't they? So you don't need to. They understand the positioning and mechanics of how pro wrestling works. So it's always easy to get in there and just wrestle around with them without having to talk too much. You might talk about high spots and key moments in the match, but you don't necessarily have to go step through everything. You can rely on them to be in the right place at the right time, to base you properly, to sell for you, make you look good as well as you making them look good. So it's all those sort of things that contribute. And it's not always the case that you gel with everybody, even if they are, a good wrestler. But it is a nice feeling when you get in there with someone and you don't even, you know instantly. I would say 95% of the time you can lock up with someone and you'll know instantly if they're decent or not.
Really?
Yeah.
So just a bit like the handshake, like as soon as you have that lock up, you're like, oh, this is not going to go well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And then what do you do as a veteran in that scenario? So is it then for you to really kind of
you kind of take over a little bit more.
Take over a bit.
You're less trusting of what they're going to do, so you make sure you kind of manage the situation such that you're always in control to some degree, I think is the best way to describe it. I mean, that's generally what I've done in the past.
And then is there a conversation afterwards? Do you debrief a bit on some points, or is that just?
I might try and give them some pointers. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
If they're a lost cause, maybe not. But I might say, listen, you're good at this and that, but you might want to work on this, that, and the other, and just take it from there.
Well, it's that respect part of the business, isn't it?
Yeah.
And with all of the reputation you've built up, I'm sure, for a lot of the people that you've worked with, especially the younger talents, are probably really hungry to get that feedback from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Yeah,
you'd think so.
There's a phrase I often say is that those that ask don't need it, which is generally what the case is. But then that's the reason they don't need to ask, is because they do ask. So they've actually taken advice on board and they've implemented it, and they've become a better wrestler for it. But yeah, you'll be surprised at the amount of people that don't feel the need to ask. But
it's interesting. So I had a man that I know you've shared a ring with a good few times, Rishi Ghosh, on the show recently.
Okay.
And he was talking about changing in wrestling etiquette and what he's seen over his 20 odd years wrestling, and how some of the things in pro wrestling that maybe were almost unwritten rules, say in the late 90s, early noughties, are starting to get lost as a new talent comes in. Things like, he was giving examples like giving up your chair for a veteran, shaking the hand of everyone when you arrive, speaking to the promoter, being clear on what your time is so you don't go over time. Is there any of that you've seen kind of evolve over your time wrestling?
Yeah, almost all of that, really.
Really?
We talk about it's. I mean, I'm not that hung up on going around shaking everybody's hand. You know, I mean, you can say hello to someone. You can. I'm not going to walk. I'll wait for people to come to me. A terrible thing to say, but the just being polite and generally professional in your demeanour and how you approach people is the best thing. I've had guys that will come to me and say, I want to do this, that, and the other, and I've had to say, well, that all sounds very good, but it doesn't fit with what the promoter or the booker wants out of the match, and I'm not taking some of that stuff. You know what I mean? You've got to be diplomatic in your approach sometimes, and how you speak to especially veterans and people with more experience. And I kind of noticed that, but Rishi's probably been in more contemporary locker rooms than I have in the last few years. He's probably seen that decline more so than I necessarily would. And I'm probably coming from a different position, whereas when I come to a locker room, or certainly in the last year when I went to a locker room, it was not as a regular part of the crew. It's like I'm there as an attraction, as being Doug Williams, you know. So I generally get treated maybe a bit better than someone, you know, like Rishi, who's still on the circuit. He's still doing the rounds, but he's been doing it for a long, long time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He might have that familiarity that people think they can maybe not be quite so. You know, maybe break a few of the old etiquette rules that used to apply all the time.
Oh, it's just a sign of the times, isn't it? I mean, you know, we're talking different eras. Every aspect of business has changed and evolved, and probably a lot.
I mean, absolutely. When I was
in a boardroom, are different to what you get now.
When I started out, you come into the locker room, you sit down, and you wouldn't say anything. You wait until you're spoken to by the veterans. You know, you sit down and you know, like a young child almost. But that's obviously clearly changed, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. No. You shouldn't be walking into a locker room of fear. You should be walking into a locker room of collaboration and camaraderie, you know. yeah,
absolutely. Because you're all there to put on a product that's entertainment at heart and have a good time, aren't you? That's really what it should be about. And the thing I love about the art form of pro wrestling, you know, is the fact that it's two professionals who are there to make one another look as good as possible. It's quite an unusual thing in any other competitive sport, but actually your job is to make your opponent look as strong as possible, not to get yourself over. And that's what I think is fantastic about wrestling when it's done well. Again, as a student of, you know, Bret Hart,
that's what the match calls for. If that's what the match calls for.
Yes, yeah.
But you're right. No, you're absolutely right. That is the.
Of course, I also come from the era of the early 90s squash. So, yeah. There's also the alternative of the 2-minute beatdown, which was popularized.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if someone wanted to, this is the hard question, you've probably been asked countless times, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If someone wanted to watch a definitive Doug Williams match, is there one particular bout or a particular opponent that you had such great chemistry with that you would say, watch that above all else?
I think, and it's interesting you asked a question on today, because it is this day, on this day, in 2010, where this match occurred, where I wrestled AJ Styles for the TNA TV title match. I think that's a good kind of example of a classic Doug Williams match. And we do, you know, a bunch of British-inspired stuff in the start, and there's suplexes and flying knees and flying, you know, uppercuts and all sorts of stuff. So that's definitely one to watch. Earlier things is definitely early Ring of Honor matches, me against Christopher Daniels from March 2003, I think, and me against Bryan Danielson from very early on, I think June 2002. there's some classic examples of me in action, so to speak. Numerous tag matches around here and there because seem to have won more tag titles than I have singles.
Yeah.
So it's those are probably the if I give you two matches, it would be that AJ Styles from Final Destination, or can't remember what it's called now. But it was from on this day in 2010 when I won the TV title from him.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
This episode of Wrestling Life is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Legacy Sports Nutrition. Take your physical and mental performance to the next level with Test X9, the natural testosterone booster. Clinically proven, Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition is NSF certified, third-party lab tested, and made in the US of A. And it's brought to you by friends of the show, 3-time world champion Nick Aldis and 10-time world champion Mickie James. Nick developed and uses these products himself, so you know they work, and he shows you how over at legacysubs.com, with links to clinical studies on each of the 9 key ingredients. No bull, no bro science, just facts. It's time to level up your strength, energy, libido and drive now with Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition. And if you want to really level up, go for the ultimate test stack, adding T-Assist, a pro-grade estrogen inhibitor and test enhancer, and the best-selling sleep aid Recovery PM, and discover why improving your sleep is the key to unlocking your mental and physical potential. So stop settling for average. Go to legacysubs.com now and use the promo code WrestlingLife for 10% off your entire order. That's promo code WrestlingLife. And if you subscribe to have it shipped every 30 days, you can still get the discount every single time. So head on over now to legacysubs.com and level up with Legacy. It's interesting because you mentioned about tag teams. I mean, yeah, you have had a myriad of tag partners and won multiple tag championships. Did that just kind of come about organically, you being in tag teams? Because obviously that wasn't your background coming into...
No, yeah, I think so. Just it was just interesting in like, obviously I won the GHC tag titles in Noah at a time when they weren't putting single titles on foreigners anyway, so you're always going to be winning a tag title if you're foreigners there. And then in TNA, obviously my role there was to be the captain or mentor, what you like, the veteran of the British Invasion tag team, and to bring Nick along. So again, I was kind of pushed into a tag team role, and just went along with it and do it. I wouldn't say I'm specifically a tag team specialist in any respect, but I do enjoy doing tag team wrestling. I think for me it's more interesting and exciting to watch than singles matches a lot of the time. And it's been interesting having to do so many over the years.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess
you can split my career into kind of 3 phases, and you have your singles run for the first 10, 15 years, and I have this spate of being a tag kind of specialist for another 10 years, and the last 5 years have been back to, with the exception of last year when I won the NWA tag titles. But other than that, it's all been it kind of split into phases, so to speak.
But you've enjoyed all the ride.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, fantastic.
So look, you mentioned him. I mentioned this off camera briefly before.
Okay.
Nick Aldis, so British Invasion. So you were, a fixture of TNA for many years, and then, as you say, you started this partnership where you were, I guess, in that dynamic with Nick Aldis and Rob Terry, the elder statesman of the British Invasion. Now Nick has said in many interviews how much influence you had on him. Nick's a friend of the show, and I asked him what I should ask you, and he said, is there anything you learned or observed from him that helped you to also grow and evolve as a performer?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. I think what I learned from his is about poise, is about how to present yourself as a superstar, as someone who's larger than life, who's someone that can get themselves over without necessarily being the best wrestler in the room. I learned how to cut promos better because of the confidence that he kind of instilled, in me from watching him cut promos, because he was always very confident and always good at that from the outset. So I think when it comes down to it, those are the things that I've learned from him. So definitely, it's been a two-way street.
It's I had probably best part of 3 hours interviewing him about a year ago, and we went through the whole career and Gladiators and his move over to the States. And at the time he was just saying, I just want a chance, or just give me a chance in WWE.
Yeah.
And just incredible to see. My Instagram just blew up one day because I'd collaborate on something with him, and I suddenly just saw all these notifications, Googled Nick Aldis, and I was like, oh wow, GM of SmackDown. And I know it's an interesting road into WWE, but I'm just so pleased to see him get that opportunity now, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very, very happy for him. And I know that he'll take every opportunity he can when he's there. I spoke to him like just before he took a job with them about his options, and to me it sounded like that he was most excited about that. Because at first, because they only brought him in as a producer, he was a bit, I don't know, disappointed, I guess, because he thought, he had a lot to contribute on screen. Yeah. Of course, as soon as he heard that there was possibility that they would give him that role as well, he leapt at it, and rightfully so. I think he's going to be fantastic,
Yeah, and I think I also think it's a great introduction for him, because
right,
there is the fact that there's a lot of people, especially watching WWE, that simply have only ever watched WWE and they've never experienced TNA or Ring of Honor or possibly even AEW. Sure. There is a pure fan base for WWE that is so ardently loyal to that project, and so I think him having the opportunity to build his own character and name for himself in a WWE ring will open up so many doors for him when he inevitably steps into a ring, because he's already been RKO'd. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, he took it very well as well.
He did.
As I knew he would.
In one of his patented suits, no less.
Yeah, that's right. When he's standing there, he's basically the same size as Randy Orton.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so pleased for him, and I hope it.
He is an exceptional wrestler, by the way. That period from when he wrestled Cody for the NWA title, all through the NWA run has made him a phenomenal all-round competitor, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a shame he's stuck in a suit at the moment.
So look, talking of tag team partners, you mentioned it briefly. You also had an NWA run last year with Harry Smith as the Commonwealth connection.
Correct.
Now, Harry is, of course, the son of a late great British Bulldog, and he seems to have just such incredible work ethic and ring presence, and obviously comes from this really rich family pedigree. You're talking about the era you were watching wrestling, so you'd have very much been, I'm sure, as a student of the game, watching the British Bulldogs and how much they revolutionised the WWF. What was that experience like of working with Harry?
Well, I wrestled him before, a long, long time ago, for 1PW in the UK when he was just a young lad starting out, and I've obviously met him plenty of times down the road. It was fine working with him, just because I know I didn't have to think about we go back to the British Invasion, because I was the veteran and Nick and Rob were learning and coming up. I was the one that structured matches, put them together. This is what we're going to do, etc., etc. But I knew that when I was with Harry, I didn't have to do that. He would contribute ideas as well, so it would be an easier path or less stress on me, should I say, to try and put good matches together. And we complemented each other as well, because I'm not on the small side, but I'm whatever, just under 6 foot, and he's like 6 foot.
I met him last year. He's a big guy.
He's a beast. So he's a power guy. I was a technical guy. It kind of worked well for the period that it was happening.
And how did that come about? That kind of run that you had with NWA?
Well, it was funny, because I was originally brought back to NWA to reform British Invasion with Nick, and we were going to go into the Crockett Cup as a British Invasion, but then, for whatever reason, I don't know, someone was injured or pulled out. Nick was then pulled back into the main event singles title run, going up towards Crockett Cup. So they just slotted Harry into that space instead. So Nick was, pulled out. They changed direction with him. And they said, you want to tag with Harry instead? And I said, yeah, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'll make it work. So that's what we did. And
I guess at this point you've held so many tag team titles and had so many partners that you know how to click.
That's it. And I believe that it was only something that was meant to run to the Crockett Cup, but because we had such a strong showing in the Crockett Cup, then they decided to put the belts on us at the next set of tapings, which was a nice gesture for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as I knew, it was only going to be a one and done thing for the Crockett Cup at the time, which is why we didn't get matching outfits made.
Okay. The mark of any great tag team.
Absolutely.
But you had a tag team name, which is more than most tag teams these days.
It's funny that because I just threw it out there as kind of a half joke.
The Commonwealth Connection.
Yeah, and Joe Gaddy picked up on it straight away and went, "Oh yeah, that's good, Commonwealth Connection."
Yeah, well, it's that very special relationship that exists in England and Canada, isn't it?
Absolutely. There we go.
Yeah,
back from the old imperialistic times. That's great.
Yes, absolutely. So, look, you mentioned at the start. So, you said about that this was kind of your second time you'd stepped away from the ring. So, was it 2018 before that you took a break?
Yes.
So what led to that, Doug?
I needed neck surgery.
Right.
And I kind of felt at the time I was a little bit burnt out on wrestling. I felt I'd done as much as I probably could do to that point. I was 48 as well by then. And as I say, I neck pain was causing me strength issues in my arms. So I needed surgeries, and that was essentially the reason for retirement then. The intention was always to retire at the end of the year, 2018. And it was only when, the guys that ran Progress came up with a storyline, that we brought it forward to September, but I still fulfilled the bookings I had till the end of the year. But yeah, it was, again, it's injury. It was just injury that made me make that decision. And, like at the time, British wrestling was on a high. It was very, very popular. There was an abundance of talent. All the shows were drawing well. And I thought, well, I don't need to be here really anymore. Not in the ring, not performing. I don't need to, my contributing factor of doing that is minimal now, so I just felt like a good time to me.
But are you still going to stay involved? Like, what's your relationship with wrestling these days?
Well, I kind of took a back seat for 3 or 4 months after my operation. I'm slowly picking up little bits and pieces that I want to do. I book for a promotion in Germany. I've done. I'm probably going to do some manager spots and commentary for a few promotions next year.
Yeah.
Just keep my hand in a little bit and help guys out where they can.
Yeah.
Just more on my kind of terms, as opposed to having to do it in order to make money and build a career. It's having fun now.
I think what's interesting on a show like this, Wrestling Life, you are someone who I think it seems to me that you have managed to strike a real balance between your wrestling career and your professional career. So, we were talking about you having an extensive quantity surveying career, alongside, going worldwide with pro wrestling. Seems to me like you've managed to seamlessly bridge two lives, but I assume it hasn't been as seamless.
No, it hasn't been seamless at all. No, it's been exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there was a point where I had to stop working full time on a regular job because I was just so busy going to Japan or going to America. I mean, there was, if I go back to like 2006, 2007, I was doing 200, 250 shows a year, so the amount of time I could contribute to my normal business was kind of minimal, even though I had it still running. And sometimes, it, puts stress on you, but you pull through. But you make them, you make hay when the sun shines, don't you? it's all there. I try and do as much as possible in the short period I had. You know, a relatively short period you think you have when you're wrestling.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's the thing that really interests me because, you know, I it's such a nomadic lifestyle, isn't it, to be a pro wrestler? Like for me, looking on as a fan, like it never fails to amaze me that one day you could be in the UK, the next year in the US, the next year in, you know, wherever. It's incredible, the sheer breadth of travel and the schedule that you have to do, especially as an independent pro wrestler. How did you kind of find the grind? Did you just is it something you just get used to after a time?
Yeah, it's something you just do. You just do, really. I mean, especially when you're building your career and you're younger, you just accept it. I know it's crazy. I found some old diaries the other day, my scheduled diaries. I was just looking at, I had a weekend where I was in Bristol, then I was in Glasgow, and I was back down over in Norwich in one weekend. And I was thinking, what was I even thinking? When did I eat? When did I train? You know, but you just did it back then. And like obviously later in my career, like the last few years, I'm much more selective in my jobs, and I wouldn't drive anywhere more than 3 hours away. I'd either take the train or fly if it's like Scotland or something like that.
Yeah,
because it's just not something it just takes away the fun of the job. You know, traveling is fun, but not when you have to drive for 8 hours, wrestle, and then drive home in the same 24-hour period.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I remember going up to a 1PW show in Doncaster from living down south, and just driving up and doing that, and even as a fan, just driving that 5 hours to a show.
Yeah,
knackered me out, and I didn't have to get in a ring and battle.
Yeah. They say the travelling is the worst part of it, and it is really. It's the part that puts the most stress on your body, I think.
Yeah,
you're sitting cramped for hours on end. You're not doing your body, your joints, or muscles, or any part of your spine. You're not doing it any good at all, really.
No.
The bumping part of it's probably a relief.
Yeah. And was that a nice aspect of TNA? Because with a lot of your time in TNA, were you located in one place, or when you were in TNA?
Yeah, generally generally. I mean, they had house show loops, but they would always be. You do like a run of 3 shows, but they'd be in the same area. So you'd fly into a city, drive around a couple of hours per each show, and fly out the same city generally. But like all the TV tapings were in Orlando, so that wasn't traveling that far. So yeah, the schedule there was really easy.
And of course, the Floridian lifestyle must have been a pretty nice change of pace as well.
Oh yeah, really, really nice, and endless sunshine. You can't complain.
Don't have to pay for your tanning, do you?
No, absolutely not.
This episode of Wrestling Life is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Legacy Sports Nutrition. Take your physical and mental performance to the next level with Test X9, the natural testosterone booster. Clinically proven, Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition is NSF certified, third-party lab tested, and made in the US of A. And it's brought to you by friends of the show, 3-time world champion Nick Aldis and 10-time world champion Mickie James. Nick developed and uses these products himself, so you know they work, and he shows you how over at legacysubs.com, with links to clinical studies on each of the 9 key ingredients. No bull, no bro science, just facts. It's time to level up your strength, energy, libido and drive now with Test X9 from Legacy Sports Nutrition. And if you want to really level up, go for the ultimate test stack, adding T-Assist, a pro-grade estrogen inhibitor and test enhancer, and the best-selling sleep aid Recovery PM, and discover why improving your sleep is the key to unlocking your mental and physical potential. So stop settling for average. Go to legacysubs.com now and use the promo code WrestlingLife for 10% off your entire order. That's promo code WrestlingLife. And if you subscribe to have it shipped every 30 days, you can still get the discount every single time. So head on over now to legacysubs.com and level up with Legacy. So that is a incredible career. You've pretty much faced everyone wrist to face, but is there one that got away from you? Is there one match or opponent that you always hoped would happen, but it never quite lined up and the stars never aligned?
Well, there's an almost, because I did wrestle him. I wrestled Kurt Angle in a 5-minute TV match.
Did you?
And the wish was that we would get a longer match on pay-per-view, and I know that Kurt pitched for it. But the feeling at the time was, because I was X Division material, an X Division guy, and he was a heavyweight, they weren't going to go down that path. But that would have been something I'd really like to have done, a nice 15, 20-minute match with Kurt Angle. I think that was something that TNA missed the boat on. Absolutely.
And strange ruling, because presumably you're pretty similar weight-wise, the two of you.
Yeah, no, same height, same weight. In fact, I probably weighed more than it at the time. Yeah.
But it was that period when you were very much aligned with the X Division, and
exactly, yeah. And he was part of the main event mafia or whatever they called him.
Yeah.
I think it was during that period. So
out there in the digital ether, there is a 5-minute match of you and Kurt Angle, but that's all we got.
Yeah, well, on YouTube they show like the last 2 minutes of it or something. But yeah, you can see the last 2 minutes. But yeah, if you have the TNA streaming service and you have access to all the Impact Wrestling, you can go through them. I'm sure you could find it somewhere on there.
I'm curious.
I couldn't even begin to tell you the month or anything like that. I mean, it's 2010, but I don't know.
We'll find it. I need to see that. I'm really curious, because when I interviewed, so I mentioned this to you before you came on, like, you were the first wrestler I interviewed, probably going back 10, 11 years. It would have been, you were in a period where you were in TNA, but for some reason you were also doing loads of independent bookings in the UK. And I think you're at a Future Pro Wrestling show. Yeah. And how does that come back when you're contracted talent, but you're then...
Well, for the first year I was contracted to TNA, I still lived in the United Kingdom.
Right.
So provided I wasn't working for them, they had first dibs on my bookings. But as long as I wasn't doing anything for them, which obviously I wasn't when I lived in the UK all the time, I could take independent bookings over here. So that was fine.
Right.
And then when I did move to the States, and I had the X Division title, I just arranged through them to do tours over here with the X Division belt. And providing there's a few rules they set, like I couldn't do any jobs, or then they would authorize those tours as well. So that was always good.
That's a great exposure, isn't it? That's win-win for the company in downtime. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And obviously it also helps the independent promoters out, and they put a current TNA star on their poster.
Yeah.
I think you can't underestimate the popularity of TNA back in the UK back in the day when it was on Bravo. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and about how in early 2000s when I was in Japan, I go over to Japan, I get recognised, and fans in the hotel lobby, and they want you to sign stuff, and you feel like a celebrity. And the joy of it is you can come home and no one knows who the hell you are. You know what I mean? That all changed when I was on the TNA. I would literally walk down the street, and every 2 or 3 minutes, someone would go, "Hey, Doug Williams, TNA." And I was like, it got a lot of exposure here, TNA. I think a lot more people give it credit for. And that's why the attendances of their house shows when they toured over here always drew so well, I think.
Yeah.
I would get recognised nearly everywhere I went.
Well, it's
that 2 or 3 year period, I was on TV for TNA. It was good.
I mean, TNA's just celebrated. I think it's just had 1,000 episodes of Impact. I mean, it's
right,
way gone and beyond what anyone expects it probably ever would. It's had incredible longevity, really. I saw that you were at one of the recent, or you're backstage at their recent tour that you did in the UK. Was it nice to catch up with some of the old crew? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I'd gone along, primarily to meet with Kazarian and Chris, Eric Young, who are all really good mates of mine. I'd seen Eric quite recently when he toured last year in the UK, but the other guys I hadn't seen for a long, long time. So it was great to catch up with them. Gail Kim, obviously, I knew. She's over because she's a producer for them. And Scott D'Amore, I know Scott D'Amore, I've known since 2002, probably. A long, long time. So yeah, it was really good. It was really nice. And, it was nice to be welcomed by them as well. They were like, come backstage, hang out, do what, it was really nice.
Well, the thing is, you're very synonymous with TNA, your name is. And, we're at a point now where Impact is about to rebrand and become TNA once again, which I think is a move that most people are very celebratory of. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because for me, I think it's great. It's kind of feeding into that nostalgia for a brand.
I do, and really, their most popular period was when they were TNA. You know, from 2006 through to 2010.
Yeah,
they were the second biggest company in America, and yeah, the brand obviously still means something to people. So I'm happy about it. It's good, you know.
and it's a lot easier to chant than Impact Wrestling. I've never really been told what they do.
Very true, very true.
No, I wish them all the best and every success, because at the end of the day, the more viable wrestling promotions there are out there, the more opportunity there are for talent to earn a living, and the better it is for fans. So for me, I've never been a subscriber of, you've got to like this promotion over this promotion or this promotion. There's more than enough. If anything, there's too much wrestling content these days. But
absolutely,
there's definitely more than enough to go around.
Oh yeah, and I'm the same as you. I'll watch good wrestling. I don't care who's putting it on.
Yeah,
Who's promoting it. I'll watch it if it's good. I'll watch stuff from WWE. I'll watch stuff from AEW. I'll watch only. I'll try and catch stuff on online for New Japan or Noah or Impact even. As and when I can. It's just I'll read about something. Or this match was good. Or it was two guys that I've always wanted to see against each other, and I'll seek it out and I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I'm not a member of anyone's team. I'm there to be entertained and enjoyed by good wrestling, whoever puts it on.
So do you feel that you can now kind of transition back to being a fan for the sport that you loved?
I do, and I try to be. And when I watch it, I'll try and look at it through the mindset of a fan. I'm still very.
Can you do that without being critical?
No, I can't really. It's difficult. It's still difficult, but I allow myself to sit back and be entertained and look through any logic holes that I see.
Yeah.
But you've got to take it for what it is a lot of the time, especially with modern wrestling, and understand that's how the art form is nowadays, Yeah. And if you accept that and take it on board, then you can enjoy it a lot better, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not an embittered old veteran who thinks it was better back in the good old days, because a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it was, but a lot of it wasn't. And it's I'm trying to be a fan. Trying to be.
Yeah.
I definitely stay positive. I'll highlight rather than It's like when people will ask me, in the dressing room about their match, and I always make a point of highlighting what they did well first. And then I say, well, and then these are things you can work on.
Yes.
I would never say this was bad, that was terrible, cut that out. I would just tell them what they did well and what they could work on. And I think that's how you have to approach it. Because it makes them feel better, and it makes them feel like they're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Instead of knocking somebody down.
Yeah, absolutely. And also wrestling's cyclical, isn't it? Like things that are evolving now, they'll be different in a couple of years. Like I feel like I've seen so many different eras of wrestling over the last 35 years as a fan. And, the styles change, and I'm not 100% sure I'm necessarily that on board with some of the aspects of the current in-ring product, but then there were definitely aspects of the 90s product, late 90s product, that I was deeply uncomfortable with. And, everything changes, and we learn more about, people learn more about injuries, they learn more about pacing, and probably the product we're seeing now will be very different in 10 years' time, when some of those,
I do have to say,
the
product differs from promotion to promotion as well.
Yeah.
So the evolution of wrestling is not a linear thing. It goes at its own pace within different promotions, I find.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point, Even in the promotions that try and encompass everything, they still have hallmark things that set it apart from what another promotion might do.
Yeah.
It is interesting to see that. And it allows a fan to pick and choose what they might want to watch so much better, I think, because of that. If everything's the same, why watch
anything? Absolutely. It's all a menu, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Take your dish.
That's it.
So look, my last question, Doug, and it's been fantastic to have this conversation on. But you've left your boots in the ring. It's the final time. You said your wrestling days are done. I guess there's a case of never say never, but as it stands currently, you are retired. So firstly, on behalf of fans globally, thank you for your career, and thank you for all the memories and great matches you gave us. What do you believe your legacy in wrestling is?
It is demonstrating that you could break out of the normal routine of things and work towards the ambitions that you set yourself, and kept the legacy of British wrestling alive through a period where it was very, very dim or probably non-existent on a global scale. And I kind of hope that I contributed to bringing it back to the forefront. So I'm hoping that's what my legacy will be.
Well, I think you unquestionably did, I know you unquestionably did, and I don't think the British scene has ever really been healthier, or the opportunities for British talent have ever been more plentiful than they are right now.
No, I agree totally.
Yeah.
It's great to see, to be honest with you, even though I can't be part of it. It's great to see.
Well, you can enjoy it from the sidelines now, knowing that your work is done, and you can just enjoy life now, and hopefully enjoy life without taking quite so many bumps.
Definitely. Oh yeah, for sure.
Where can my audience follow you on social media?
So on Instagram, it's at Doug Williams GB, and Twitter, or X if you prefer, it's Doug Williams UK. Don't ask me why they're different; they just are. I do have Facebook, but it's friends and family only, so don't follow me on there. That's the two main social media platforms for me, is Instagram and Twitter. You can drop me a message if you want, or look at the content. I'm always, if I'm appearing anywhere, or I'm doing any guest training seminars, podcasts, or whatever, then those are the two platforms I will promote them on.
Nice. Well, everyone listening or watching today, take a screenshot, tag Doug, tag me, let him know what you think. Thank him for his career, and thank you very much for your time today, Doug.
No problem, Ben. It's been fun. Thank you.
So that is it for another Wrestling Life. Thank you to my guest, the ambassador of British wrestling, Doug Williams. Thank you to my producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions, for bringing Wrestling Life to life. This has been the Wrestling Life podcast, and we'll be back very soon with more real talk from real talent. Until then, be good to each other. See ya.